Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of October 30th, 2024. Happy Halloween, everybody. Kind of a smaller week this week, which totally fine with. Same thing on the independent side. You can check out our Indie Spotlight over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube and you will find it. But this all stems from the fact that it's a fifth Tuesday and a fifth well, I say fifth Tuesday because DC books used to come out on Tuesday, but it's a fifth Wednesday. Everything now comes out on Wednesdays. But yeah, a fifth week in the month, which typically is a bit of a smaller week. So yeah, we only have I think 5 DC books that we're going to talk about in in earnest, if you will. So we don't really have a top 5 here because we can sort of talk about everything. Even though I have to admit, like if some of these books came out during a regular week, I don't think they make my top 5. Um, Not to say there weren't some good things, but it did feel, even though it was a smaller week, it did feel like it wasn't that impressive. I hate to be a downer on it, but maybe that just goes to show how fantastic the All In era has been so far. That every week previous to this has um, been a real banger, and so it did feel like this week was I don't want to say a letdown, but yeah, it just there wasn't lots to get really excited about. So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Oh yeah, well, like I say, it's the end of the month. It's Halloween. There's fewer comics, and so there's a DC's been firing on all cylinders here. I've said that expression here for the last 3 weeks in a row, and all things considered, I actually found myself. I think we're reviewing 5 this week, 5, and I think I'm still batting the majority. I enjoyed the majority of them, so I have to say I still enjoy this week. Actually, maybe I'll feel a little bit more positive initially than you will. Maybe I'll change my mind by the time we're done reviewing them. But I'm still I'm still all in.
Yeah, and maybe I'm being a little harsh, but maybe it's just the fact I'm so like I can't wait to talk about All Star Superman or Absolute Superman. So it's like,
Yeah.
man, until I get a chance to talk about that, everything's gonna sort of pale in comparison. But anyway, let's go ahead and kick it off talking about our first book in detail. Nice House by the Sea, issue number 4. James Tynion is the writer. Alvaro Martinez Bueno handles the art. Jordi Belair on colors and world design handles the letters and the design. Um, I did get a chance to talk to Alvaro Martinez Bueno at New York Comic Con, and one of the things, we talked about this. We talked about Nice House by the Lake, and one of the things that he mentioned, he didn't say anything specifically, but I was talking about the story. We're talking about how it's a bit of an ensemble piece. It's a big cast, and specifically about the challenge that he has. Like, he was saying when he used to draw Justice League Dark, it was a big cast, right? But you know who Wonder Woman is because she's got a costume on, and you recognize that costume. Or Detective Chimp because he's a chimp, or Swamp Thing because he's a big shambling monster. With Nice House by the Lake, with Nice House by the Sea, these are just regular people wearing regular clothes and not the same clothes, every time. So it's a bit tougher to differentiate. And so you talked about that. And the other thing that he said was, yeah, you ain't seen nothing yet. Basically, you have no idea what's coming. So they're going to be taking some big swings. So I can't wait to see where that goes. Now, all that being said, I did not enjoy this issue as much as I have the previous issues of Nice House by the Sea, and that's on me, because I still feel like I don't have as good of a grasp on who these characters are and their relationships with Walter and what have you as I probably should. And again, that's 100% on me. I don't want to say that this comic isn't excellent because it is. It's very good. It's a contender for Book of the Week. I enjoy it that much because we are starting to get some answers and understand the connections between the two houses and how those connections might play out, and how it might affect who survives and who doesn't, and that sort of thing. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I've only read each issue of Nice House, whether it be Nice House on the Lake, Nice House by the Sea. I've only read each issue once, and that was the week that it came out. I read it. We talked about it. I haven't gone back and done a deeper dive with the context that I have now. I think if I went back and I reread all those issues with the context that I have now, then I would have a better understanding and the characters would start to resonate for me a little bit more. But again, that's on me that I haven't done that. Um, and some people might be thinking, well, that means you got to go and read all your comics twice. I shouldn't have to read my comics twice. Well, you don't have to. But at the same time, it's like, here's a chance for you to get more value for your comic dollar. You get to read them twice. There's value. If you go back and read it again, you have more context for the story. So I'm really enjoying this. I liked how metatextually Tynion, and if you watch this on YouTube, Rocky has the page there. It's like, hey, let us explain to you the way Max and Walter are related. And so again, I appreciate at times that Tynion probably realizes that this is a complicated story with a lot of characters, and it can be challenging. So once in a while, having these not just kind of expositional pages that sort of lay things out for us and sort of spoon feed us, but oftentimes they're accompanied with really cool graphics, and it really makes the book work. So we're starting to get some answers, like I said, about how the houses are connected and the relationships between the characters. And this is just a masterpiece of character work, and any shortcomings on me not understanding the relationships with the characters or exactly how everybody relates is just completely on me, because I just need to go back and reread, especially when you read as many comics as me. It's really easy to kind of forget names and characters and wait, what was the interaction and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's no doubt that this is a masterpiece of modern comic storytelling. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, the original 12 issues of Nice House on the Lake reads fantastic from issue 1 through 12, and it's a masterful season 1 of an alien slash human slash end of the world epic tale. And this is Nice House by the Sea, and it basically continues the story. This is my favorite issue so far, issue 4, because James Tynion, he takes a step back and he says, it's sort of like a collective sigh, saying, okay, everybody take a deep breath. Where are we in the story? And the players themselves, the characters themselves, and this is such a character-driven tale that takes place essentially after the end of the world, and it sort of backs up and explains it. And essentially, we now know that Walter, we always knew that Walter was an alien that chose the inhabitants of the household of Nice House on the Lake. And we also know that there are other households that were chosen by his fellow aliens, and all the different households will be competing against each other to see, ultimately the aliens will decide which household of humans is going to ultimately survive. Now, it's revealed in this issue that Walter and Max were two aliens that in the past they went to they were relegated to Earth, and they went to a glorified prep school where they were taught as aliens how they were going to recruit humans in order to create all these various houses that would compete to be the humans that would ultimately survive. Are basically the Armageddon, so to speak. And now what Tynion has done so well in Nice House on the Lake, and what continues so well in Nice House by the Sea, is the grounded characterization. This is such a masterful tale in that it is so much that the motivations of the characters is what drives the plot. And that's very hard to pull off, because often we as comic book readers, especially of superhero comics, we often read plot-driven stories where the characters seem pulled around by the plot. The best stories, at least in my view, are the ones where the decisions that the characters make, it feels like they really drive the narrative. And that is very much the case here. And to know that Walter and Max were these alien friends that sort of had a falling out, and they each picked the inhabitants of their own household. But where it gets interesting is that there's one inhabitant, Oliver, who Walter falls in love with Oliver, and Oliver ultimately ends up rejecting Walter and ends up in the house of Max, which was the Nice House by the Sea. And Walter, who we now know was dead because he was killed at the end of the last series, we have this rogue house, Nice House by the Lake inhabitants. They don't want people to know that their alien sort of benefactor is dead. They want to keep that secret while also trying to survive. Meanwhile, Max doesn't know Walter is dead, but in this issue, it's discovered that, oh my God, the inhabitants of Nice House by the Sea now become aware that Oliver spoke with the inhabitants of the other house, Nice House by the Lake, and they take actions against their own, against Oliver, and they can be quite cruel about it. We're starting to see already how different these characters are, because the inhabitants of Nice House by the Sea, they knew they were chosen. They knew from the beginning that they would survive Armageddon and that they were chosen for their specific skill sets. The inhabitants of Nice House by the Lake are sort of like the innocent people who didn't know why Walter had chosen them and how they ended up in this enclave and that the world would end. And so right away you see the disadvantage that the inhabitants of the characters of Nice House by the Lake have versus their sea counterparts. And it really it's one of those things where I can't elaborate too much on it, because I almost don't even want to give away so many of the interesting revelations that the first 12 issues of Nice House by the Lake revealed. But if I could tell you, just imagine, I say this, I'm very biased. I love this series, and I love Nice House by the Lake. It was one of my favorites of 2022, I think it was, my top 10 list of all comics. I really think this is HBO level comic book stuff. If this was the series, this would be almost Sopranos level of entertainment for me. Now, that's just high praise. And I know that I probably like it more than most, but I love it. I love the characterization. I would strongly encourage people coming up, we're at Halloween, we're coming up on American Thanksgiving. You want to thank a friend for being a friend, buy him Nice House by the Lake, and then get him or her into this story. I think this is a great series, and I don't, picking up this series alone, you want to pick up Nice House by the Lake first, but it's well worth it. And again, this issue was perfectly timed by Tynion, because it really, anybody, just when you think maybe you're going to be maybe pulled out because of all the players, it sort of pulls you back in, because even the characters within the story themselves need to have a meeting and collect their thoughts and say, okay, guys, what's going on here? And that's exactly what we get this issue, and it's very much needed. And for me, who's been here from the beginning, it works. For people that are just coming on board, you'll get a hint of what it is, but I would still recommend collecting that first series. What are your thoughts? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying you definitely need to read the first series. This is definitely a continuation. Don't pick this up without having read Nice House by the Lake. Okay, excuse me. Up next we have Action Comics number 1073, fourth week of the weekly Action Comics run from writer Mark Waid, with art by Clayton Henry and Michael Shelfer, colors by Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp. A little bit of a transitional issue here. We get the second half of the journey for Mon-El and Superman to what do they call it? It's not is it Etherville? Etheropolis is what they call it. Yeah. So the ship that Mon-El commandeered and is in charge of, the Valcon, finishes its voyage to Etheropolis, and we get our first look at Ether. Before they can get there, they're attacked by the real Zadu, the person that Mon-El was impersonating. Why exactly he wants to stop Superman is not clear, other than Ether has some maybe vague thought that Superman might be a threat. But it's interesting, because when Superman confronts Ether kind of disposes of him like without any trouble whatsoever. So yeah, it's not 100% clear to me what exactly Zadu was trying to do, or what exactly, like, what did he tell Ether other than, yeah, I can take care of Superman, and trying to like build himself up. Zadu trying to build himself up. It's kind of an interesting dynamic, because Ether seems to be sort of like godlike in his ability. I mean, Superman doesn't even have his powers, doesn't have his abilities. And so how is he possibly going to be a threat to this being who's just uber powerful? And in an attempt to escape and get back to Earth, Superman actually travels through time and ends up back on Krypton. So how that's going to play into either the discovery of the Phantom Zone or somehow working with Jor-El to do something different in terms of the Phantom Zone, we'll have to wait and see. But again, a bit of a transitional issue here. It's not to say, nothing happens, because it is impactful to see Superman, get a chance to go back and meet his father, travel back in time, travel back to his home planet that, depending on which origin your DC is promoting this week, he has no memory of, or, doesn't recall, or what have you. So it is impactful, but I feel like it doesn't move the story forward in a big chunk. Certainly not as impactful in terms of how much story we got in the last 3 issues. This one felt like more of a quick read. Still tons of action. The art is still fantastic. But yeah, sometimes you need these transitional issues just to get to the next part of the story, and that's what this felt like to me.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that this Phantom Zone, which has been in many ways sort of heavily impacted by the actions of Zather, or Zather, if I'm saying that right, and he's the way that Superman, or he appears to be able to travel through time. He can't really control where he's going, but somehow he ends up back on Krypton. So you got to wonder, what are the origins of Zather? Where, what's his secret, and how is he able to create physical manifestations and objects within the Phantom Zone? It really poses a lot of very interesting questions, because, and also more specifically, if Superman can actually travel back in time and he ends up on Krypton, my God, I mean, obviously, it's that age-old time travel cliche. Can he change the past? Will he change the past? It's very, very interesting. Obviously, there's more secrets to the Phantom Zone. There's a lot more to it than we've been let on. I also like the fact that we got a little bit more information. Mark Waid does a really good job posing questions about what was Jor-El thinking when he created the zone? What were the ethics involved? Those types of things. And I like the questions that are being raised. And so when Superman ultimately travels back to Krypton, it raises my curiosity for the next chapter. If he does end up meeting his parents again, what's going to happen? What's going to be revealed about the secrets of the Phantom Zone? Mark Waid's done a really good job of sort of whetting my appetite for each chapter as it moves along.
Yeah, I didn't take it as Superman being able to time travel necessarily. It's because he's being thrown down into what Ether calls the well of eternal penance, dragged down to the very moment of the zone's creation. So I don't know why that is penance. Like, why is that a punishment, to be thrown down into this well of eternal penance, where in a way you're being thrown back through time? Maybe if you go back before the moment of the Phantom Zone's creation, maybe you cease to exist. Maybe that's why it's bad. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but Superman clearly is able to stop himself from going all the way back to the moment of the zone creation, and kind of claw his way out, and ends up on Krypton. So yeah, interesting concept. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out from there. The backup, Supergirl in the Loop, written by Marika Tamaki. Skylar Patridge is the artist. Colors by Marisa Louise. Letters by Becca Carey. Man, gorgeous art. Skylar Patridge's art is starting to remind me more and more of Bilquis Evely's Supergirl art in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which was fantastic. But in terms of the story, I don't have anything to say that I haven't said already. We're on part 4 now. We still have no answers. I still don't know what's going on. So I'm going to leave it at that. I've said everything I need to say about this story at this point. So I don't know if you have anything new to add, Rocky.
Well, only that apparently the prisoner, the prisoner that Supergirl is delivering, we are privy to the prisoner's thoughts, and the prisoner thinks that her and Supergirl's body are linked in the future. So is the future, is this prisoner somehow linked? If this prisoner is linked to Supergirl's future, that's very interesting, because that might explain why Superman had to specifically chose Supergirl for this mission. Because right now we have the same questions as we did in chapter 1, and we're in chapter 4 already. It's very frustrating. Why was Supergirl chosen? What's so special about this prisoner? The judge is dead. They're wandering aimlessly in space. it's a little bit frustrating, and I do have some frustrations. I have some frustrations with the art. I think it's even really odd, the artistic choices. I'm not even sure what's going on when Supergirl at one point is standing on a round floating ball. I'm not, and that's supposed to be. I guess that's supposed to be the place where the prisoner is imprisoned. I just thought it was just artistically. This isn't built. The artist. Pardon me, Skylar Patridge is a good artist, but it's just what she's choosing to draw to tell this story. It's not really working for me, to be honest. But again, I agree. We're same questions, no answers. But snail's pace. But I really want to I wanted to move along a lot faster.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. That's why I didn't bother. It's just nothing happened. All right. Up next, we have the Penguin special. Number 1, Jeremy Adams is the writer, Howard Porter on art, Hi-Fi does the colors, Troy Petrie on letters. And then there's a couple of reprint backups, including a reprint of the first time the Joker ever, the first time the Penguin ever showed up. And that is written by Bill Finger. Bob Kane handles the pencils in that one. And then there's also another reprint that reprints a Secret Origins tale from I think it was in the 90s that issue came out. And it's got some really great classic Sam Keith art. And it's written by Alan Grant, who wrote a ton of Batman stories back in the day. Alberto D. Guzman handles the letters, and Tom McCrane handles the colors. And interestingly enough, it's Mark Waid doing the editing. That's how he got his start in comics, was as an editor. So the only original story is the first one by Jeremy Adams, and it's fine. I don't have as much context as a lot of people will about the story because I haven't seen any of the Matt Reeves Batman content. I have not seen the Penguin TV show. I do know, I vaguely recall there was some consternation at some point about the name of the Joker being changed from Oswald Cobblepot to Oz Cobb, which I sort of get. Like, I don't know why you need to simplify it. Like, just his name's Oswald Cobblepot. Just call him Oswald Cobblepot. Like, I don't know what the problem is.
Well, the story's got nothing to do with with Matt Reeves' Batman. It's a direct sequel to the Penguin Tom King series. The story.
Is it? Because I don't remember this. I don't remember this woman. I don't remember this woman. And why are they?
The woman is the mother of Addison. And
no, I know who the woman is in terms of, yes, he's got kids, and this is the kid's mother. I get that, but I don't remember this woman showing up in those in Tom King's Penguin. The kids were already the kids. They were already born. So I don't.
Yeah.
Where have we seen this woman before? And again, I go back to, why is he being called Oz Cobb? If it's a sequel to Tom King's Penguin, he was Oswald Cobblepot in that. So I admit to being completely confused. I'm a huge fan of Jeremy Adams. He's a friend. And I was curious to see him take on the Joker, but this feels forgettable to me. I don't know what the point of it is. I haven't been a fan of Howard Porter for a long time. All due respect, I know he had an accident and had to relearn to draw, and all respect in the world to him for being able to do that. But I don't know. I kind of didn't see the point. Now, that being said, forgetting any sort of context and just having this as a standalone story, is it good? Yeah, it's pretty good. In terms of, if it is a sequel to what Tom King was doing, it has that same sense of menace and that same lack of empathy and that same feeling from the Penguin that, this is somebody you don't want to mess with. So from that perspective, if that's all it's trying to do, then it's successful. But also at the same time, I've talked before about how I see the Penguin as more of a joke type character, and as much as Tom King sort of flipped that around in his series, I think Joker. I think the Penguin still has that a little bit of that stigma for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and also it's like the cool stuff, the new stuff, the Jeremy Adams stuff is so like in comparison, it's so little of what we get. It's a cool story. It's rather on the short side. The reprints take up the vast majority of this. So I can't in good conscience tell anybody, yeah, go out and spend money on this, because the first reprint of the first appearance of the Penguin it is what it is. It's a golden age comic. It's of its time. It's sort of cringy to read now, and even the one by Alan Grant, it's okay, but I don't think it's going to like change your life or change your perspective on the Penguin. It's just, yeah, I don't know why DC decided to publish this is what I'm getting at. Like, if somebody is discovering the Penguin because of the TV show or because of the Matt Reeves movies, go read Tom King's Penguin. You don't need to be picking this up. So in all due respect to Jeremy, he's probably going to listen to this and be like, why are you telling me people not to read my book? Go read Jeremy Adams Flash. Go read Jeremy Adams Green Lantern. But yeah, and read the Penguin story by Jeremy Adams here. But I can't tell you to go spend your money on a reprint of the Penguin's first appearance or a reprint of a random Penguin Secret Origin issue from 1989 or whatever. So anyway, I don't know. Maybe you think there's more value to this than I do. What are your thoughts?
I do think there's more value to this. Having said that, though, I do agree that we both love Tom King's Penguin. There are two stories in here that are really good. The best story is the one by Jason Aaron, which reprints Joker's Asylum, The Penguin, He Who Laughs Last. And that Jason Aaron story is incredible. And in fact, it was funny because when I was having a debate with a couple other people on Twitter about the best Penguin story, I was saying, when I argued that I thought Tom King's Penguin story is really good, they referenced the Jason Aaron story that, quite frankly, I'd completely forgotten about. And lo and behold, I got to read it here in this compilation. And it shows just how unbelievably dark the Penguin is, and the Jason Aaron story which is in this compilation basically has the Penguin, who is when he's basically, he takes this girl out on a date named Violet, and the chef of the restaurant, he ends up falling in love with the girl, and he's professing his love for the girl in this restaurant, and the chef just happens to laugh. That the chef of the restaurant in another part of the restaurant happens to laugh in another conversation, but Oswald Cobblepot had the thought that maybe the chef was laughing at him, and literally spent and planned the next year to 2 years destroying that chef's life, because he felt that he was being laughed at, just like he was when he was a young boy. And it showed just how the lengths that the Penguin would go to destroy your life if he hated you, or if he thought he was being laughed at, he thought he was being put down. It's a very powerful story, and just well done by Jason Aaron, art by Jason Pearson. It's very, very well done. And what I like about the Jeremy Adams story is that I think, and you said this already, but just to, I look at it in a more, I guess, a more fluid way. I just feel that you're absolutely right when you remind us that in Tom King's Penguin, he was Oswald Cobblepot. I do find it interesting here that now he's Mr. Cobb. He wants to be, the title, the story is actually called Mr. Cobb, and here we are told we never saw Madeline. I didn't know. To be honest, I mean, Tom King's story had the Penguin sleeping with another woman in Metropolis, and I mean, now this is, all of a sudden we meet Madeline, the mother of Addison and Adeline, the children that he killed, and he just did that. He's so sick and cold. We thought he was cold by killing his own kids in Tom King's Penguin series. He's really cold-hearted and miserable to his ex-wife, keeping her alive. She's basically saying, he kept her drugged, and one of the nursing, the male nurse discovered that she was overdrugged and thought he was doing the Penguin of Mr. Cobb a favor by, making his wife more lucid. But no, that's not what Penguin wanted, Penguin ends up killing the male nurse, and also rubbing it into his now lucid wife. who basically is begging him to kill her, and he doesn't. He refuses to. He wants to stretch out her misery, and it's just you see how dark and depressing and how sick this new Mr. Cobb is. So I see this as an evolution of his character that started with Tom King's run, and now he's changed his name. That's how I'm viewing this. Is he's evolved forward. He's changed his name to Mr. Cobb now. He's not Cobblepot. And he's just as sick and as decrepit as ever. And then that's confirmed by the backup stories, which remind you that he's always sort of been that way. And it sort of reminds us, I think, people will get a sense of the evolution of the character through over the last few decades, or last 5 decades of Penguin. And so I enjoyed it. And I actually think that this, in conjunction with the Tom King 12-issue series, I think would be the definitive Joker. If you get the 12 issues of Tom King, Penguins, thank you. I did the same thing you did. Yeah. But anyways, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a little more than you did.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point. But the problem is it feels like a little bit of whitewashing, right? Oswald Cobblepot just sounds like such a ridiculous name, so we're going to change it to Oz Cobb because, more modern, whatever. I don't like when they change something like that just because they think it's silly. The character is the character, he's enduring. He's lasted a long time. Just, call it like it is. I don't know. That just bothers. It always rubs me the wrong way. So, but you're right. I mean, the phrase "fate worse than death" comes to mind. Like, yeah, how evil and despicable do you have to be to, keep your ex-wife like you don't want her. You could kill her. He could kill her and get rid of the body. No, he wants her alive, and to be suffering. Like that's just wrong, man. It's just so wrong.
He's sick.
Anyway, yeah. Up next, we have Batman: The Last Halloween, issue number 2, written by Jeph Loeb. Klaus Janson is the artist. Dave Stewart on colors. Richard Starkey handles the letters. What are your thoughts on this?
Sorry about that. First of all, I love Klaus Janson's art on this issue. This was they got a different artist for each issue, and this one is Klaus Janson and Dave Stewart on the colorings. Sometimes when I think I know that Tim Sale's not alive, but for some reason as long as I've collected comics, I like to think sometimes that I can distinguish between artists. But again, if I didn't know better, I think this was. I admit I can be fooled that this does have a Tim Sale feel. What a wonderful tribute! This really does feel like a Tim Sale, Jeph Loeb work, and it shows. I love the story here. I love the story. Where we continue with Batman investigating the kidnapping of James Gordon's son. James Gordon Jr. has been kidnapped. He was kidnapped on Halloween night, the same night that Catwoman was shot. And Batman and Robin go into Arkham Asylum to do further investigations. Robin ends up talking to Calendar Man. And he discovers that Catwoman is at Arkham Asylum. Happens because one of the doctors that she has on the side is healing her, is addressing her bullet wound, and they discover that Catwoman thinks it was Holiday that shot her, and that the Holiday criminal has returned because she was shot on Halloween, and because they're approaching Thanksgiving, something big might be happening on Thanksgiving, or another murder of some kind. The issue started off with Solomon Grundy being basically killed, although it's Solomon Grundy, he'll inevitably return. But it's clear that James Gordon Jr. is kidnapped, Catwoman is shot, Grundy is killed, and then near the end, the Penguin ends up getting shot. I don't think he gets killed, but he gets shot at the end, and that's at Thanksgiving. So right away we see that something is amiss, and it looks like somebody's trying to set Batman up, because the person who shot Penguin shot the Penguin with a .22 caliber gun. The same person, Catwoman, was shot with a .22 caliber, and it looks like Batman himself was set up. And just as Batman discovers the weapon used to shoot the Penguin, the police show up, and so Batman is clearly being set up here. And is who's behind this? Is it Holiday? Is it like what exactly is going on here? So it's very easy to follow. Fantastic art. For lovers of the Batman: The Long Halloween, this is just I love the. This was quick paced, easy to follow. Easy, great transitions, easy flowing dialogue. I got to tell you, I'm not a huge Jeph Loeb fan per se. I actually think that maybe he's lost a little bit of his writing mojo over the years. Quite frankly, I sort of, that's kind of what I thought. And then when he got out of it and he went into TV, and then he's coming back, I had my doubts, and I'm happy to report that I'm wrong. This is really good stuff. I'm enjoying this, or maybe I enjoyed the Long Halloween more than I realized, and I really enjoy this. I really enjoy this trip down. It's a trip down memory lane artistically, and it has that old time feel to it for me. But at the same time, this is a modern day story. I quite enjoy this. What about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm glad you used that term, modern day story, right? Because to me, the original Long Halloween feels like sort of timeless, and it could fit in any time, and it doesn't. It specifically doesn't feel modern to me. And I talked to Jeph about this at New York Comic Con. I commented, I was like, yeah, what I was really surprised by with the first issue was how modern it felt. But obviously, it's a story that sort of flashes back to Batman's earliest times, and Holiday Killer and all that. And it does, like I said, the original feels so sort of classic and set, and it feels like a period piece, for lack of a better term. And this doesn't. And his comment was, I wasn't necessarily going for that, but maybe that's just Eduardo Risso's art. And I didn't necessarily feel that was the case, but he's like, yeah, just wait till you see how you feel about the next one that comes along. And you're right, Klaus Janson is clearly channeling Tim Sale here. It feels like Tim Sale art, and Tim Sale art to me Tim Sale art has never felt like it's rooted in a specific time period to me. It's always felt sort of like I said, timeless. But this still feels like a little bit of more of a modern story, like a current modern day Batman story, as opposed to feeling like a story that takes place during the early part of his career, which is not to say it's not good. It's very good. And I appreciate that this is, again, the sort of the last story for the Holiday Killer and what have you. But I am a little bit surprised. This doesn't feel like, hey, this story could be in, the regular ongoing Batman series. It doesn't feel that modern, but it certainly feels more modern than the original Long Halloween in my mind. So, again, we'll have to see if that same feeling plays out. I don't know if it's a pacing thing. It's not something I can quite put my finger on. But setting that aside, this idea of the Holiday Killer being back, of framing Batman, of taking out the Penguin, of shooting Catwoman, of ordering Solomon Grundy wrapped up in chains and cement bricks and dropped in Gotham Harbor, like all of that stuff is really working for me. So I'm really enjoying this, and this idea of whether it's feels like a modern story or feels like a classic Batman story is kind of an interesting kind of aside, if you will, to think about contextually. And it may not be until we've got the whole story and we can read it together that we really can think about that. But yeah, just on its own, just as a standalone story, it's very, very good. Okay, up next, last book that we're going to talk about in detail is Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Times. Now, we knew this was coming. G. Willow Wilson talked about it actually when she was on the show last time at San Diego Comic Con. So she's the writer. The art is by Mike Perkins, colors by his frequent collaborator Mike Spicer, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And yeah, this is basically a Swamp Thing, Poison Ivy team up. What did you think?
I I thought I was this didn't really have any surprises for me, and to the extent that I wasn't surprised, it's all frankly positive because J. Willow Wilson told a good story. Mike Perkins, fantastic art, and Mike Spicer. I mean, what a fantastic, the two Mikes. I mean, Mike and Mike, Perkins and Spicer, man, between their art and their colors, it really, they're, frankly, we're born to draw Swamp Thing. And of course, frankly, a perfect combination of Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing. And you know what? I was reluctant to actually buy the physical copy of this for the simple reason that I think that I actually realized why I enjoyed this. Why did I enjoy this comic so much? And it was because I actually went into this thinking to myself, well, these characters are so much alike. They're both products of the green. And then it suddenly occurred to me why I enjoyed it, and that is because we actually get kind of an explanation what distinguishes them in this comic. And I never realized that I would be interested in the answer, but I actually kind of am. It's like, you know, and Swamp Thing makes some very good points to Poison Ivy here, because Poison Ivy, at one point, essentially what happens is that they end up, both Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing here, they feel that the green is crying, that the trees are crying, and it's because this woman is basically lost. This woman is lost, and the woman who's lost actually has a connection to the green herself, and this woman's name is Paula, and they're looking for Paula. And while they're looking for Paula, they end up teaming up with another character that looks like Swamp Thing, kind of, and his name, the Kettle Hole Devil. What a name, the Kettle Hole Devil. And anyways, he's kind of on their side, and I'm not really sure exactly what he does, but they end up finding this woman Paula, who ends up unfortunately passing. But it's the conversation, quite frankly, and the dialogue between Pamela Isley and Swamp Thing that really I got the most out of here, in conjunction with the fantastic visuals. And that is that, you know, Poison Ivy is someone who the Swamp Thing refers to as half and half. And she said, well, what do you mean half and half? He goes, well, you're not really part of the green. You're not 100%. She goes, what do you mean I'm not 100% of the green? I'm all about the environment. You don't have any, at one point, the best line in the series, the best line in the comic is that Poison Ivy gets defensive saying, what do you mean I'm not 100%? You know how many times I've tried to kill the human race? And Swamp Thing gave an excellent reply. He says, how many times have you stopped? And of course, that's exactly right. I mean, she never went full green. I mean, she always stopped herself. It was always her humanity that held her back from having the environment essentially overwhelm and kill humanity. And it was a really good discussion that I really wish this should be part of the main Poison Ivy series, because this is a very informative one-shot, I think, in terms of getting into the head of Poison Ivy. J. Willow Wilson, better than any of her first 25 issues that I read. I admit I stopped collecting. I stopped reading Poison Ivy at the 25th issue, but now I'm reading this one. I got to pick this one up. We get some explanations about Poison Ivy here that I thought were a little bit more insightful and a little bit more interesting and even humorous and a little bit more revealing about Pamela Isley than before. And I really quite enjoyed that aspect of it. And what really heightened Poison Ivy's comments on that, her humor and her sense of humor and her introspection on that, but also with the loss of Paula, who was part of the green. I almost got a little bit of an X-Men vibe here in the sense that, you know, both Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy, they found this woman, Paula, and she's actually another person that's got a connection to the green. And there's not a lot of people in the DC universe that we know of that have a connection to the green. And there's a tragedy here where, you know, these people who have a connection to the green, if they're this vulnerable, that they die. And it's, I felt Pamela Isley's loss. I felt the loss of this Paula, this character, which we'd never met. And they give a backstory for her. And I thought it was actually quite touching. This is actually my favorite issue of Poison Ivy, even though it's not part of her main series. This is really, really good. I thought this was very well done. Love the visuals. And I know it's a short week, but this is a pretty strong candidate for me for pick of the week. But what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was really good as well. And I kind of felt similarly in that, well, why wasn't this part of the regular, you know, this should have been part of the regular book.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, okay, so Swamp Thing has guest starred in that book. already, and it sort of doesn't move the needle, right? So you're more likely, if you just get a one shot for a Swamp Thing fan to pick this up, or somebody that wants to see the team up, because people have been clamoring for the team up for a while. Um, so I can kind of understand why they did it this way. The art is next level, from Mike Perkins and Mike Spicer. It's really, really fantastic, poignant story about Paula and her connection, and kind of how she has a sort of a downward spiral. She sort of has the deck stacked against her from the beginning, in a way, with the abusive relationship she comes from and everything. But you're right in saying that the real shining moment or shining moments of this book are the interactions between Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy, and their conversations, and the way that, even though they both care for the Green and have a connection for the Green, it's really their differences that are highlighted, which it really works for me, and I think it's a fantastic story from that point of view, from that context. So yeah, definitely pick this up if you're a fan of Poison Ivy, or you're a fan of Swamp Thing, or um, sort of the idea of the Green and that sort of thing, or if you're just a fan of amazing art by Mike Perkins. It's really a fantastic story, and a good story for Halloween too, in that it's scary in not in any sort of body horror way, or any like jump scare kind of way, but scary in terms of this poor young woman losing her life, and how it feels all too possible to slip between the cracks, and end up in a situation like her. So all right, like I said, that's going to do it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. There are a couple of other single issues that are out this week. There's a Wonder Woman Uncovered, which basically they've started to do these these books that reprint a bunch of variant covers or classic covers. They've started to do a little bit of writing, like, framework around it. You don't need to do that, DC. Just put the covers. You don't need to
Yeah.
try to make a story out of it, because it's just silly. People are buying it for the cover, not for any sort of story, so that's fine. There's also Multiverses Collision Detective issue number 4, which I think is a weekly that ties into the Multiverses video game, so that's out this week as well. And then in terms of collections, DC versus Marvel Omnibus hardcover. I don't know if it's actually out. I mean, I know it was supposed to come out, and then there was a printing error, and they had to like pulp a bunch and then redo them. But I don't know. It might be out. It might not. There's 2 different covers. There's the regular hardcover. There's also one that has a Jim Lee wraparound. So if you're looking for that, it might be out. You might be able to pre-order. Also, Batman Volume 2, I Am Suicide trade paperback. So this is in the Tom King run, which collects issues 7 through 12 of that. Then we've got Absolute Batman Death of the Family hardcover that collects the Death of the Family story from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo from the New 52. And then we've got Batman Superman World's Finest, the Silver Age Omnibus Volume number 1. And finally, Scooby-Doo's Greatest Adventures trade paperback, the 2024 Joel Batista variant, is out this week as well. Okay, book of the week, Rocky. Not a whole heck of a lot of choices here. What is your...
Yeah, well, I played my hand, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go with the Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing's Feral Trees. I believe what it was called. That was still Mike Spicer, Mike Perkins, J. Willow Wilson. What a collaboration! Fantastic. They caught me off guard with this after 25 issues of Poison Ivy, which I thought J. Willow Wilson did a pretty good job. For this to come out of nowhere and actually be my favorite out of all those issues, and just sort of a nice top off to that. I was quite impressed with it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I got to go with Poison Ivy Swamp Thing as well. Like the quality of art just put it over the top for me. Like that Penguin book, just based on the Jeremy Adams story, maybe I can pick like the Jeremy Adams story, but I got to factor in the other the other 3 stories, which are all reprints, which I would have a hard time giving to that. The Action Comics is a bit of a transitional issue, and as much as Nice House by the Sea is excellent, again, it's on me that I need to go back and reread to feel like I have a little better grasp on the characters and their interactions. So, but there's nothing needed other than just pick up this Poison Ivy Swamp Thing one shot. Even if you haven't read any Poison Ivy recently, even if you're not familiar with the characters, you get everything you need in this standalone issue from G. Willow Wilson. So I had to go with that as well. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for joining us as always. Don't forget, if you're listening to us on the audio only feed, we appreciate it. You can find the podcast audio feed on your favorite podcasting app or favorite podcasting platform, Google, Spotify, Amazon, whatever it might be. I was going to say Stitcher, but I don't think that exists anymore. But anyway, that literally thousands of episodes previously that you can go and check out, interviews, reviews, convention coverage, all that sort of thing. Just hit subscribe when you find the Comic Source, and we appreciate you joining us. And if you're checking us out on Rocky's channel, be sure you subscribe as well. It's over on YouTube, Comic Space Boom ! Ring the notification bell, leave some comments below. Let us know what you thought of the books this week, what you're looking forward to coming up in terms of DC All In. Is it Absolute Martian Manhunter? Is it Absolute Flash? Is it Absolute Superman? We love getting conversations going in the comments. So be sure you're subscribing. Also, you can check out our independent spotlight every week over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube and subscribe. Tons of content's been coming out there lately. Interviews from New York Comic Con, interviews from other times. Have an interview coming up with Mark Waid and Dan Mora about Justice League Unlimited that'll be coming out later this week. So a lot of great content. We appreciate the support. That's going to do it for this episode, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.